move on next to the Hospital Sisters of St. Francis. So the day after the Hospital Sisters of St. Francis arrived in Springfield, November 11th, 1875, they began serving the sick out of their house on 7th Street and in people's homes the next day. Earlier that month, when they arrived in Alton from Munster, Germany, Bishop Baltus divided the 20 young sisters into groups of 4. He sent them on to Effingham, Belleville, East St. Louis, Litchfield, and then here in Springfield. In each settlement, without wasting a moment, the sisters began their healthcare ministry. Within a few years, their home in Springfield wasn't big enough, and a hospital was built. St. John's was built on the corner of 7th and Mason. The bishop sent these German-speaking sisters to German settlements to eliminate the language barrier they might otherwise face. Weren't the sisters surprised to find the immigrants in these German enclaves speak English? Thank goodness for the Ursuline sisters. They invited the Franciscans to join them in their first grade classrooms to learn English.
St. John's Hospital was founded on November 11, 1875, when 4 Hospital Sisters of St. Francis from Germany arrived in Springfield. Their humble beginnings of home nursing led to the building of Springfield's first hospital, named in honor of St. John the Evangelist on Mason and 8th Street. The years that followed continued to bring the most modern medical equipment and treatment to those who came to St. John's for care. This hospital today is a regional medical center offering state-of-the-art healthcare services to people in need. This ministry that began by the sisters continues through our colleagues, physicians, and volunteers who are inspired by the core values of respect, care, competence, and joy, and our Franciscan heritage.
St. John's College of Nursing began as a diploma program only for the Hospital Sisters of St. Francis. In 1912, the student population expanded when women who were not members of a religious community were admitted. And in 1956, men were welcomed as students in the program. It became St. John's College of Nursing in 1991 and continues to offer a wide array of baccalaureate and master's degree programs. The faculty and staff are focused on teaching excellence and student success as they educate the next generation of nurses, all in the spirit of the founding sisters.
A 1913 survey of the deaths in Springfield revealed that tuberculosis was the primary cause of death, especially among the poor. The Hospital Sisters of St. Francis responded to this need by opening St. John's Tuberculosis Sanitarium in 1919. It was located 6 miles northeast of Springfield, near Riverton. On this property was a farm with a vegetable garden, 70 Holstein cows, 700 chickens, and many ducks and geese, all of which kept the cost to the patient at a very low level, namely $5 to $6 a week. The 200-bed sanatorium included surgical and dental departments, a lab, x-ray, pharmacy, a large kitchen, and a laundry. At the time, the only treatment for tuberculosis was rest, fresh air, and sunshine. Patients experienced physical and spiritual healing in St. Francis of Assisi Church and through the natural beauty of the property. Because patients were often isolated, families could only visit them by waving from the outside to their loved ones standing in the window. The TB sanatorium remained open until 1973. 54 years later, when medications were developed to treat the disease.
In 1928, amid the Great Depression, the Hospital Sisters of St. Francis at St. John's Hospital, Springfield, welcomed those who were without work and who were hungry by offering coffee, soup, and sandwiches each day, thus the beginning of St. John's Breadline. Through Catholic Charities, St. John's Breadline continues that ministry by serving free, hot, and nutritious meals in a clean, safe, and positive environment where all are welcomed. Open 365 days a year and providing anywhere from 400 to 500 meals a day, the Breadline is a lifeline to not only the homeless, but to many people who are on fixed incomes or have various disabilities. For 96 years, this ministry has continued to give living witness to being Christ's healing presence to those in need.
And now, Sister Jomary and Brian Blasco, can you join us here at the front? I feel like we should have played a walk-up song for you. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. Sister, we'll come to you first. You and your sisters have been attentive to the physical, spiritual, and social health of Springfield for 149 years. What do you see as the enduring legacy of that service?
Thank you, Sarah. In order to answer that, I'd like to set a little context. It helps to understand the great achievement of the early sisters. When the sisters arrived in Springfield, it was in many ways a frontier. Aside from its agricultural pursuits, it had moved into mining and railroads, and there was a large foreign employment. Consequently, a lot of immigrants. Tensions existed between the natives or the locals and the immigrants, and rightly so. And there was opposition to immigration, largely because the majority of the people were Catholic. And there was a suspicion that these Catholic people were loyal to the Pope, and there was a concern they might not be loyal to the current local authorities. Unions were also appearing in it. It was a whole era of organization, not reorganization, there had been none, but organization and expansion. So while it was exciting, time to be living, there were many unmet needs. And that's the focus, I think, that our sisters could have come into Springfield and started anything, and it would have been an improvement. Malta saw that all these people gathered in this location needed health care. And it was probably more sick care at that time than health care. Health care came to be understood quite a bit later, and I think our sisters had something to do with that we conquered a lot of diseases and we began to figure out how to avoid them. Bishop Maltese viewed Springfield as the center for our sisters' activity, and from there we would go out into other places because it was the state capital and it presented a lot of opportunity. However, the confluence of real close living spaces and lack of sanitation and sewers and things that we take for granted today, these things contributed to illness. And so there was malaria and typhoid and other things to contend with. And there were no hospitals, dispensaries, or professional nurses at that time. A lot of sickness. Relatives and neighbors were the ones who were asked to take care of the sick, or the people who didn't have that were considered poor and just left along the wayside. If there was any place like a hospital in the vicinity, it was more considered a pest house, or a place where people went to live and to die. And I don't mean hospice. It was a different kind of place. So the character of America was taking shape about the time in Springfield, Illinois, about the time our sisters arrived and began their ministry there. As the film depicted, it led to the first Catholic school of nursing in the United States because the need was so great for professional people who had some basic education. The little band of German sisters arrived in time to make a significant contribution to the culture of the city that would emerge. And to be honest, these Franciscan sisters, what they were doing was duplicated across the country over and over again by sisterhoods who came into rural areas or areas that had no development and who did marvelous things. And this has been described over and over again in many books. Springfield was fortunate with the sisters that they did have arrive here and the contributions they made. There was complete lack of organized health care. So all this being said, it's my belief that the legacy of the hospital sisters has to be defined by the enormous contribution it made to the development of formal health care in Springfield and from Springfield out to many other places in Illinois and Wisconsin. The 6 sisters, I know we've been referring only to 2 or 4, but they arrived in dribbles, it seems like. There were 6 who made a major influence, right? And the others of the 21 went elsewhere and did great things as well. The 6 German immigrants arrived with little more than their own 2 hands. They didn't bring blood pressure apparatus with them, and IV fluids, and some of the basic things that we consider today that should be in every room, much less every hospital. Okay, they had none of these things. They had their own 2 hands, and they certainly knew how to use them. Okay, they quickly established themselves. In healthcare, you have to gain trust before you can do anything to try to cure. And so they endeared themselves to the local people simply by their willingness to roll up their sleeves and work. And this was one of the characteristics of our sisters as long as I knew them. And I started working at St. John's Hospital when I was a high school girl here in Springfield. They established themselves, they dealt with the infectious diseases, they stayed well themselves, which is a miracle, and they battled measles, typhoid, malaria, and a large amount of meningitis, spinal meningitis, which those of us who know that this is something you really want to avoid. You don't want it anywhere around. And the historical documents tell us that at one period of time during the month of May, they cared for 100 American soldiers from a nearby army camp who had spinal meningitis. Now that would constitute an epidemic today. And our sisters with no antibiotics and no IV fluids and whatever, with some, courageous doctors worked with these young men. So the original founders deserve to have their names said out loud, okay, of St. John's Hospital. Mother Angelica, Sister Cassiana, Sister Sojourn, Sister Crispina, Sister Basilia, and Sister Macaria. They started out as direct caregivers using their own 2 hands. They were also fundraisers, chief cook and bottle washers. They drove they borrowed a horse and buggy from a rich farmer and traveled the whole area begging. Oftentimes they got grain, so then they went to a local mill and turned it into something else, but that's how they fed people. They gave whatever care they could give, and they helped to bury the dead. History shows that the hospital sisters showed a constant commitment to service in spite of war, depression, natural disaster, prejudice, religious persecution, controversy with the church, it existed, and economic hardship and more. Through it all, two things were constant, and these are borne out throughout our history. The sisters desired to serve the people, and through healthcare, it happened. But we also saw food banks and everything else because health requires good nutrition. The desire to serve and the desire on the part of the people of the area to put their loved ones into our hands, to entrust them to us at the beginning of life, at the end of life, and at all points in between. These two things were what sustained the ministry during its early years and onward. St. John's was the first Springfield hospital, as we just heard, in 1897, and quite a few years later, Memorial Hospital of Springfield at the corner of North 5th Street and North Grand Avenue was born, and it serves to the present day Springfield Memorial Hospital. Both hospitals have had distinguished years of service, and so when I think of a legacy, and say, how do we know we have a legacy? Well, take a look. If one were to ask for visual evidence, the Mid-Illinois Medical District might be mentioned. It's a designated square mile just north of the downtown, anchored by the two hospitals, as well as Southern Illinois University School of Medicine, and a Springfield Clinic, which is a rather large clinic, and certainly it's internationally known. All of these organizations have figured prominently in the history of healthcare in Springfield, and we are pleased and proud to say that the hospital sisters had the distinction of planting the first seeds, of setting the thing off in the right direction, of working carefully with the other parties that came in to everyone's strength, and of providing the Catholic ministry of healthcare that the church asks us to provide. Thank you.
Now, Brian, your threads of connection to the hospital sisters are pretty long. Would you tell us how that has shaped you and your outlook on life?
My association with the sisters began 56 years ago when I was born at their hospital in Streator, Illinois. Interestingly, your panel tonight would have met that same year, 56 years ago, but Sister Jomary was reassigned from Streator in August, and I was born in October. Otherwise, we would have been there at the same time. But we are here tonight together. As a child in the small town of Streator, Illinois, the sisters knew me, one, because I was born there, but second, I would sing with my brother and sisters for the sisters annually at the hospital. And then as a teenager, they knew me because I was an organist for the masses in the hospital chapel. And then as a college graduate, they gave me a job as I returned to my hometown to work at the hospital, doing communications work. And then that led to me meeting the sisters in Springfield, becoming one of their associates, and then 20 years ago moving here in the role that I serve now with the sisters in communications and archives and helping them out in other responsibilities. So this lifetime really goes back to that first day 56 years ago. So maybe that OB nurse had some influence in the delivery room. In my role of communications for them over these 33 years, I really have been a sponge. I have listened to these remarkable women who have shared their stories with me so that I could pass them on to others. Often I speak to our HSHS colleagues and to other visitors to the property over the years as I pass on what this legacy of these hospital sisters of St. Francis means. not only for them in their professional role as a nurse or any other profession in the hospital setting, but really in a deeper way, how are they being a better person and how they can live their own calling in life. And the sisters also helped me understand the difference between vocation and calling. And I hadn't really thought about this till they said, well, your vocation's what your resume says. It's that degree that you have, your work. But what is your calling? You know, why are you on the planet at this very time and place living out your vocation? And so for me, I became aware that it is service, that I can be of service to whoever it is I encounter, I speak with, I meet, not just at work, but really throughout every day of my life. So it's been this powerful journey for me. And in our Franciscan heritage, I was blessed to then learn of the story of St. Francis, who had his own conversion of heart. And it was really then, as he embraced the leper, someone that he originally had been opposed to. They were unsightly, they were contagious, but seeing that this was actually Christ. All of us are created in the image of God, and so this was God in the form of a leper. And our sisters took that story throughout their history. And one example you heard tonight was the TB sanitarium, the leper of the time, where they said, this is Christ in the form of a man or woman with tuberculosis. And so as I have spoken over the years to our colleagues, I have said to them, how can you translate this wonderful Franciscan story into your own life? Meaning, who might be your leper? And oftentimes, it might even be in a way that you hadn't thought of, because it could be someone that has hurt you. A family member, a friend, someone who has disappointed you. It could be a different person of a culture or religion or any gamut. And we hope and pray that those who hear this message might take it to heart to say, I can see the face of the God I worship or the person I love in that group of people or this individual. And that's such a powerful lesson. And as I have known many of these dear sisters over my career, I'm going to specifically name one tonight who really made an impact on me. And this is in 2005 in Chicago, Illinois, and her name is Sister Patricia Ann Mulkey. And she is in heaven. But in 2005, I went to dinner with her in Chicago. And following the dinner, we both had containers of food that we're going to take back to our homes. And we exited the building, and there was a man sitting on the sidewalk. And Sister Pat Ann kind of went like this to me, and we sat next to him. And she began talking to him, and she said, "Sir, are you hungry?" He said, "Yes, I'm very hungry." So she opened the container, and she said, "Here's what I have for you." And then she gives me a little bit of a nudge. And I said, "Oh, look what I have." And so I presented my food. "Thank you, sir. This is so kind." "Ma'am, sir, so kind of you." And we both said to him, "We hope you are well. God bless you both." And we said, "God bless you." So we got up to leave to walk back to the car. And she said to me, "Well, Brian, do you know who that was?" And I said, "Sister, I'm not from Chicago. I don't have a clue." And she said, "Well, that was Jesus." And so it has stuck with me. And so I would ask all of you tonight to take that story with you. You can't always give the container of food. You might not be able to hand them the money that they're asking for on the corner, but could you at least recognize them with a smile, pray for them, or do something? Because that is Christ. And that would make Sister Patricia Ann so happy. So with her encouragement, I have walked past people now who I stop and acknowledge. And I share this story also when I speak to our colleagues that visit us. So really the sisters' impact on my life has been a blessing and life-changing for me. And I am really one of thousands of people who have benefited from them and because of them. And I'm very honored tonight to be among some courage-serving colleagues of some of their ministries. And so I'd like them to stand up and be recognized. So these are people who currently carry on the legacy. So when I call your organization, stand, and then I want all of you to join me in some applause. Representatives from St. John's Hospital, St. John's College of Nursing, and St. John's Breadline and HSHS. Thank you all. Sisters, we are very honored to continue your legacy, and Sarah, thank you for letting me share my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you very much. You guys can-